Morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of Jesus' resurrection in the Gospel accounts. And we're in John's Gospel, and we're in chapter 20. And we're going to be talking about Jesus and Thomas. Thomas was not there when we were together last time in the upper room with the other disciples, Jesus manifesting his self in a room with a locked door, but manifesting a corporeal body. And he's going to do the same thing again today. Thomas was not there that first time. And so he's skeptical and he is holding back and he's saying, unless I see empirical proof, I'm not going to believe. And of course, in John 20, whatever you need to believe is given you, and it will be given him it will be given him today. So let's read John 20. I'm going to be verses 24 through 29. But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, which means the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore were saying to him, We have seen the Lord. But he said to them, Unless I shall see in his hands the imprint of the nails, and put my finger into the place of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. And after 8 days again, his disciples were inside, and Thomas was with them. Jesus came, the doors having been shut, and stood in their midst, and said, Peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, Reach here your finger, and see my hands, and reach your hand, and put it into my side, and be not unbelieving, but believing. And Thomas answered and said to him, My Lord and my God. Jesus said to him, Because you have seen me, have you believed? Blessed are they who did not see and yet believed. Many other signs, we'll get to verse 30 next time. Okay, let's end with verse 29. Blessed are they who did not see me and yet believed. I think last time we were together, I said that the events prior to this could have happened a week later. Not necessarily. It could have been very much the same day, and this is 8 days later. And so I don't want to mislead you. In fact, it might be even be most likely that it was the same day based upon what we read in Luke. But this is 8 days later, so this is not on a Sunday. It's on a Monday. 8 days, an interesting number of days. And I know it's significant, but I'm not sure exactly why it's significant. One of the best Bible bookstores I know of is in Wichita, Kansas, and it's called Eighth Day Books, which is cool because it's about, books that produce faith. And this is about Thomas coming to faith. Thomas is called the twin. He must have had a twin. In Gnostic teaching, it was believed that Thomas was Jesus's twin. And then Mary gave birth to twins, and Thomas was one and Jesus was the other, but only one was the true Son of God. That's goofy. I'm pointing that out to you that that that's what some have taught over the years, and at one point a lot of people believe that, but and even to this day, because Gnostic teaching is popular again among old hippies and their ilk, I guess. But anyway, um, um, he was a twin. That's interesting information to have. And he wants empirical proof. He says, I mean, I have to experience with my senses, and not just my eyes, not just my ears. I have to touch. I have to touch. Um, this has always, not always, this has since 2004 been a very important passage to me because that's when I had my first major surgery. I had cancer surgery in 2004. And I had it at Johns Hopkins, which is one of the best hospitals in the world, maybe the best hospital in the world. But it's a teaching hospital. And when you go to a teaching hospital, you agree that the med students can come in and be part of your care. Um, and that's an eye opener, you know. The guy comes in with the med students and your homework for that day. And it's almost like, you're a car up on the rack. You're just somebody, they take off all the dressings of your wounds and they get in there and they poke and prod and you're just there as the object lesson. It's so dehumanizing and discouraging to have that happen. And it happens on a daily basis in a teaching hospital at times. It happened to me that way. And I have to call the nurses and I'd have to say, the med students have been here. And they come back and retreat and redress everything, because they just made a mess of it. And that's what Thomas insists on doing. If I don't get a poke around in his wounds, I'm not going to believe. And so that's what Jesus says. He appears to them the way he did before. It's like a do-over, but it's not on a Sunday. And he's there just for Thomas. Uh, and he says, okay, if that's what you need to do, then do it. Here they are. Here are my wounds. Just stick your hand in if you have to. And of course, he doesn't have to. And he says, my Lord and my God. And then Jesus, as he did in 17, in John 17, he prays for the apostles and he prays for us, those who will believe on me by their testimony. That's us. He thinks of us and talks to us too. Jesus said to him, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are they who will not see and yet believed. Well, that's us. Jesus is holding in his consciousness every one of us who has ever responded to the gospel, that they started preaching on the day of Pentecost and believed that he is the Christ, the Son of the living God. We were in his mind, in his imagination, in his heart at that moment. Before we were ever born, before we ever existed, we were in his mind on that day, um, and every day, I'm sure. Well, we're going to read verses 30 and 31 before we get to the long episode from 21, which is really an epilogue, and yet so important. And so we'll get there next time. Thank you so much for joining me for another 5 good minutes.